Hello everyone, welcome back to another podcast with Timmy and Will. Good morning, Tim.
Morning, Will. How are you, buddy? We've
Good.
had a solid start to our trip here to Melbourne, haven't we? And today's an exceptional day.
On our last day, I've got a flight booked for 7 o'clock to get back home, but mate, pumped to how we're finishing the trip off. We've got an incredible guest, so
We do.
I'll let you intro him in and we'll get stuck into the conversation.
100%. So we've been lucky enough to have this gentleman sit with us today. It's an incredibly inspiring journey that he's been on himself, and I can't wait to dive deep into everything about life and his inspirations and the way he goes about life in general. So I try to sit back and think about this man in a sense from an external factor. I don't know him from a bar of soap yet, but the words that come to mind was like humble, genuine and tough.
Yep.
I think that's the way he particularly plays his football, and I think it's the way he goes about his life as well, and it's incredibly inspiring. So he also has a mission to make this world a better place. He grew up in Reservoir, which is in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. Pretty sure he played his junior football at West Preston.
I did.
Yeah.
Both Reservoir and West Preston.
There you go. Don't give your voice away
sorry.
yet, mate. But he did. He is an elite AFL footballer at the Richmond Football Club. He was drafted in 2008. In his time, he has just knocked over the 300 games. He is a triple premiership captain. He is a 3-time club best and fairest. He is also the 2012 Brownlow medalist. He owns a sock company called Posy Socks, which I'm really excited to get more deeper into the whole story behind that and where that has come from. He's more importantly a father of 3 incredible children and a devoted husband. We're very excited to introduce this tigerific man, Mr. Trent Cotchin. Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks, boys. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, mate, look, obviously, Will.
Yeah, mate.
What do you...
Just thinking of the words you said there around external looking in. To just back that up, like we're sitting here on a Saturday, it's Trent's bye weekend. Humble enough to say this is actually his Tuesday. He's got a short week playing a game later on the week, but just goes to show taking his time out to have a chat to a couple of blokes having a crack. It's just a testament to the man he is. So looking forward to having this conversation, Trent. Thanks for joining.
No, as I said, it's my pleasure to be here, and I think from the very top, I appreciate what you guys are doing for the world. It's obviously an opportunity for people to hear different stories about the journey that many different individuals have been on. And I think that's the beauty of human beings. We all have a story. They're all very different, but we can take different parts from each other's and apply them in our lives. And hopefully our listeners can take 1 or 2 things away from today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we sort of touched on, who you're surrounding yourself with and the conversations you have ultimately determines, your life and the things that you get out of your life. So, again, we're incredibly humbled to have you on board today, and we really want to dive into those mindsets around, you as a player, but also how that translates to your life. And, there's been a few things that Will and I both learned across our journey that's got us to this position. And I'm hoping to see some resonation there too. So.
Yeah, but mate, I don't know if you've listened to a couple, but we always like to start off with a bit of a background on where our guests have come from. So do you mind telling us what it was like growing up in the Cotchin household when you were a young tacker? Was it all footy or was it...
Yeah, it's a good question, I suppose. Mum and Dad both loved the game. Mum was a Carlton supporter, Dad Collingwood, but probably just loved the game more than actually a team. My old man hated crowds, so I never really went to the footy with him. But every afternoon he'd be out the front having a kick with me. I had 2 sisters, one older, one younger. Well, I have 2 sisters. Pretty humble upbringing. Obviously very lucky, particularly with how the world is today. Parents are both still together. Most of my family was sort of within a pretty close proximity. And then we actually got robbed a couple of times in Reservoir, pretty rough and ready Reservoir, and Mum and Dad decided that it was time to make just a lifestyle change. So we moved about 30 minutes north of where we were to a farm where the Cotchin family owned quite a fair bit of property up in Wollert, which is now not really farmland. It's turning into estates and so forth. But yes, that was about when I was 10 or 11. which for me was probably the greatest move. I'm one of those kids that would be a pain in the ass to be inside with all day, and I've got 3 of them now myself, so probably learning about that. But being on a farm was the best thing. It was effectively like you had your own piece of canvas every single day, and you could create whatever it was that you wanted, whether it was goalposts in the paddock or chasing sheep or cows or riding a motorbike. And to be honest with you, most weekends I spent listening to the footy on the radio, working with Dad in the paddocks, freaking moving rocks. Well, it's known for its rocks. There's plenty of them.
That's why you're so tough.
I don't know about that. Maybe hunched over. That might be the reason. Dad reckons he lost about 10 centimetres of growth when we moved to the farm. So very lucky. Had a great upbringing. Didn't live a lavish life, but also incredibly grateful for the opportunities I had. We holidayed in Echuca, Moama, which is where Mum and Dad reside now, and my younger sister as well, on the river, on the Murray River.
Great spot.
Have been very fortunate and lucky, but I wouldn't say I had an overwhelmingly, I don't know what the word is, but it wasn't like we travelled overseas every year or anything like that. Most of our trips were based around my footy trips. So
it's funny, hey, like I always feel the country kind of kids are not taking anything away from city kids. Like everyone's having a crack, but they're just to be brought up in that environment where you can just be running around, like I said, the blank canvas, got the goalposts up. There's something about that.
We're definitely built different.
I'm probably biased, but country boys. But,
absolutely.
There's something to that, I think. It's the fresh air. It's like I say, I'm sure you learn a lot as well working with your old man out in the farm.
I think the frustration you see with particularly younger kids that are probably metro based coming into footy teams is just like the lack of life skills they can have. Now some are very lucky and been fortunate enough to go through that journey, but they're the things that I think are really important to take you forward in life, like just to think outside the box in a situation. 100%. And it might not be relative to exactly what you did as a kid growing up, but it gave you those skills to work through them.
100%.
So how about like at school, Trent? Like what were you like as a student and like everyone's like, I want to be a policeman or a fire. Like what did you aspire to be when you were younger?
Yeah, I probably always aspired to, my dream was always to play AFL. I started when I was 4.5 in
Geelong
under
Cats
9s.
you followed?
Followed the Cats, and now despise them. No, I don't. I actually respect them, but I hate them in a really weird way.
20 grand final
it was very sweet. Seeing them win it last year wasn't so sweet, but I was actually wrapped for Sal, who I have obviously admired from afar for a long period of time, and we've had some great battles on field. But school, I would say I was an average student. I always tried relatively hard. I think when you reflect on it, you always think you can probably have given it a little bit more of a crack. I was lucky. I went from what I would call a private school, but not one of the higher end sort of private schools, to getting a scholarship to go to Pegs for year 11 and 12. And from a schooling point of view, it was the best move I could have made. And then also footy-wise, we had the great Ken Fletcher as our coach, Dustin's old man, who'd been there for about 476 years, I think. But we had a really good team. So there was like the combination of enjoying my footy, and at times it was kind of, I hate smashing teams, and we just always beat teams really comfortably in my senior year.
Do you lose interest when it...
Yeah, even now, like AFL games, I prefer it to be a close one every week.
Yeah.
My wife and friends who follow the Tigers probably would prefer us to blow teams out of the water, but I don't know, it's not why I play the game, to blow teams out of the water. So
What I was going to ask as well, so obviously you're a humble bloke, but let's be real, you're elite in what you're doing here in the AFL. You're 300 game multi-premiership player, but always like to dig deep on the early days. And was there a secret there that really kind of set you up for success? We've already touched on a couple, but what was your discipline like as a young fella? Like, you decided from an early age that you wanted to be a footy player. Was there like the early mornings, or was it just extra training, or what was it like when, I'm probably just more talking for parents potentially listening in and guiding their son or daughter through their younger life? Like, what does it take as a young fella to be in that discipline space to set yourself up?
Yeah, I was never forced or pressured into doing anything I didn't want to by my parents. But like, I was really strict on bedtimes, even as I got a little bit older and around the 14, 15-year-old mark. Parties were really big at Pegs when I went there, and it was just something that I've never really engaged in, really. I reckon I went to a couple in my first year. It's not my comfort zone. It rattled me a bit, but...
Are you socially awkward?
I'm awkward, full stop. But I celebrate that. Yeah, so from a discipline point of view, I think I was always self-driven. That was probably one of my strengths. I was tiny all the way until I was probably 14. I didn't grow. Yeah. So many people had already written me off. Like, as much as I had talent as a junior, they always would say that I was just too small. I probably wouldn't make it, but you'll make a brilliant local level player because you win the footy and so forth. And I was only talking about this the other day. Upon reflection, I went to a Leader Sports Star of the Year award, and David Roden was there as like the senior qualifier or whatever, and he had just been or about to be drafted to Richmond, and it was almost like, as much as D-Rod wouldn't necessarily go, I had the most amazing career as a player, and he was obviously challenged by injury with a couple of knees and so forth, but being how small he was and seeing him up and close in person as a 11, 12-year-old gave me hope. Yeah. And that's kind of all I needed. And then, you know, I think I grew probably 6 or 7 inches in my under 14s year. So sort of went from this tiny little pocket dynamo they used to call me to someone who was nearly at a height that was respectable.
A frame, I could imagine.
Yeah, I was always pretty thick. Yeah, and heavy. I don't necessarily look heavy, but just good density.
Yeah. And mate, you drafted, was it 2007 or 2008?
End of 2007.
End of 2007, 2008 season. So let's just kick into that and that career part of your life. So obviously getting drafted is exciting, but coming into Richmond Football Club, they weren't having a successful time. So but then over that journey, I think you were become captain, 22 years old, 2013, around there, or 2012, and then you played finals the next year. Can you talk us through a bit of how that journey looked like? And then from a leadership perspective, what were some gaps that kind of, as you reflect, that you really built on as you guys come into the club, that 2007 era, to set yourselves up to then becoming a real elite team coming into the late 2017 plus?
Yeah, good.
That's a loaded question.
All right, let's break that down. I'll go the initial part.
Yep.
So I was actually, I broke my foot in the finals of my TAC Cup year just before getting drafted. So first run back, my Achilles blew up. Spent the first 3 months of being at the footy club. All I wanted to do was prove my worth, being pick number 2 and so forth. Couldn't do it. I was literally not far from where we are right now. In the dungeon, we called it, which is currently actually our change room, but it's all been revamped over there. And it was a lonely place, and I spent the first 3 months, couldn't really do anything other than swim and do medicine ball circuits. So I think I got up to about 89 kilos in my first year. Big thick neck on myself. Managed to play 15 odd games from my debut round, and then the next off season just like trained my ass off. Wanted to make sure that it was a good kickstarter for the next part, and the opposite side, exactly the same injury, blew up. So I sort of had the first 2 pre-seasons. I didn't really do a pre-season, but it taught me so much about management of body, knowing and understanding my body at a more intimate level, which I think has held me in good stead in the latter stages of my career. But yeah,
slightly cut you off, Trent, but that's probably helped you get to the 300 plus games and still be so healthy and ready to go for probably.
Yeah, pick and choose. So no, you're right, and like even to the point where to this day I have my own masseuse that comes to my house every week, gives me a 2-hour massage. Like I don't know how many of other guys, like they get other massage, but not as particular as my guy. His name's Shuggy. He's a madman. He's got a ponytail and
shout out Shuggy.
Rips me to shreds. But I think from a leadership point of view and what the club was like, it's so funny. Like to think about membership numbers. I think we had 35,000 to 40,000 when I first got drafted. Now we sit sort of around or above 100 every year.
Just in that too, Trent, who did you draw close to at your first steps into this football club? Like who was that mentor or someone that you really warmed up to and could see the difficulties and adversities you were facing and the pressure from being a number 2 draft pick?
I was lucky. I moved in with Kane Johnson, who was captain at the time, which was almost the perfect way to be introduced to AFL footy. And Sugar was the ultimate professional. He had a mishap. I think it was in my first year where he had a night on the town, and we lived right next to the St Kilda Road police station, which is like HQ for Melbourne, I think. And he couldn't be bothered going upstairs to do a wee, so he weed on the side building and that was a big hoo-ha, but it was a great lesson for me, given I was living with him, to understand just the impact that one small action that most people have probably done on their way home on a Saturday night could have as an AFL player and a role model and so forth. But yeah, I was very lucky. I had Sugar, and then Shane Edwards moved in with us as well, so there was the three of us all living together. And that was probably my group was initially Shedder, Jack, Dan Connors, and then Rancy as part of my draft as well. But when I bought my first place, it was around the corner from where Rancy was living with his parents, so we sort of shared a car ride in every morning. And built a really strong relationship where we were on the journey together, and that was amazing. And he, like, both very different. Probably he was more gifted from an athletic point of view. I was probably more gifted at early stages with regards to just talent and being able to play the game. But both kind of just worked hard and were real obsessive about where we wanted to get to, and kind of knew what was required to be effectively elite players.
And on that too is like, you come into any organisation, you see the Sydney Swans, West Coast Eagles, and these kinds of places. They have success. You can see a trend, and I'm a Western Bulldogs supporter. I don't follow it too closely anymore, but to break some droughts, it's very difficult to change that mindset. So Will mentioned about the leadership and Kane being in that position that he was, it was interesting to see. I've listened to a few of your things and interviews, and you mentioned about speaking with Jack Rewa, and it's like, are we ever going to see success at this club? And you took it upon yourself, I think, in that moment you've ticked your box to play AFL as a kid, but it's not about that. It's about the team and winning the ultimate prize. A team premiership.
And telling more of that story. So it was end of 2016. We 3 final series leading into 2016. Thought the natural progression was just to finish top 4, maybe give ourselves a chance. All hell breaks loose. I know we fast forwarded a little bit here, but finished 13th, get beaten by Sydney up there by 110 or 15 points or something like that. I was the worst captain in the AFL. Dimmer was the worst coach. Board coup. So people trying to overthrow our board. And that's where, for me, leadership's really easy when things are going well. But when it's challenging, you got to show this grit and this resolve and stick true to what your values are. And that's probably, I always knew who I was and what I stood for, but it was the most I'd ever doubted myself. And I honestly didn't even know if I wanted to play footy anymore. But that catch up with Jack was at a local cafe near where I live in the off season. And we just spoke about, it's effectively the move from I to we. And we spoke about Daniel Rioli specifically. He was going into his second year, and we just said, how do we provide someone like Daniel and the other boys around his age the best opportunity to succeed? Realistically, what have we got? Maybe 3 or 4 years left at the time. We're probably not going to taste success, but how can we give them the best opportunity to do something that we probably never will?
Wow.
It's amazing to think, now reflecting on it, that conversation even happened. But it was the shift from I to we that was so important in the way that we showed up. And I think about the forward line in 2017 and how young they were, but the leadership role that Jack played within that.
What did it feel like? I'm a big emotional intelligence kind of, and when a football club, you can feel when it's success is coming. My time at North Ballarat, I know it's nothing compared to the AFL, but we won 3 premierships in a row as well, and there's just a feeling around the club you never did anything half. You would always give it 110, but there was almost like that. I don't know how to describe it.
It's a belief, and there's a connection to it as well. And I think that comes on the back of, I like to reference the T theory, which is trust, empowerment and alignment. And that goes all the way through your club. So you've obviously got your players and your coaches, but then there's administration, there's board, there's CEO. And if they aren't on the same page and allowing people to actually blossom within their role and have an impact on it, and that can be our youngest player on the list. And little things that we implemented was them controlling the music in the gym, but that was their little thing that they were in control of. It was their baby. Some of the music they played was terrible and shit, but it was giving them ownership of something and a part of the club. And it was no one thing, and it wasn't like that conversation with Jack shifted the whole dynamic of the footy club, but we all just went on this journey where we started to embrace what people could do rather than what they can't. And I think in football world, probably in business as well, like we're so caught up on focusing on the negative and what people aren't quite capable of doing instead of just focusing and blowing up on what they're actually really good. And the way we like to paint the picture was effectively, if our team is an oil painting, but we cut it up like a puzzle, every single shape and piece of that puzzle is different. But when they come together, they create this beautiful picture. And that was kind of how we celebrated each individual within our organisation.
That's awesome.
Wow, yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. Can we keep on the track of the young players? And I guess the reason why I want to do that is it's all around, I guess, a big part of the success is the culture and maintaining culture and getting people under the right fit, all those types of things. As a leadership group, what do you guys do with the young players coming on and really set themselves up for, this is Richmond Football Club, this is what we're about, and then is there accountability, or can you talk me through what it's like?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain what our expectations are of a new person coming into our footy club is that we have relatively big paddocks but really strong fences. So there's expectations in what you do as a Richmond man.
Yeah.
And if you step outside of them, then obviously there'll be not necessarily punishments, but there'll be consequences. Yeah. And like you don't even need to necessarily have the punishments when you have a strong culture, because people already know that they've stepped outside of them, and that is a shit enough feeling than anything anyway. And the reality is when you've got 40 odd different personalities in a football environment, there's going to be times where those boundaries are tested. But I think what I'm most proud of our organisation is that people can come into our environment and genuinely be themselves.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they have to be a certain personality. Like I remember, and it's no disrespect to how the club was when I first got to the footy club, but you would go down to Swan Street, walk into a cafe, and if there was a group of senior players there, and maybe it was just the story I was telling myself, but that's got to be something to do with what the environment is doing. I would already think that they were talking about me in a negative way or whatever it was.
Wow.
And maybe I was just insecure and should grow up and toughen up a bit. But I would like to think that most of our boys now, whether it's their first year or fifth year, walking into that situation, well, they probably wouldn't ever feel that way.
That's
well,
so
I'd like
great,
to think
mate.
so anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
I'd be disappointed if it was the case.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's polar opposite to now versus back then when you were feeling that way. And there's something to that, hey, like, different world altogether, but in my sales world, bringing new consultants on, the biggest trap, how they fail, is they stop being themselves. Like, you have an interview with someone and they're great, they're ticking all the boxes, you can have a conversation with them, but then they go and get in front of someone and they're trying to be someone they're not.
Yeah.
And people just pick up on that authenticity and they stop reaching their full potential. That'd be the exact same in sport in your world. It's you're feeling, or I'm sure there are other young players feeling like they couldn't be themselves, but then that would then go out onto the field and as a team in the gel as well, I'm assuming. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's almost like that sorry, Trent. It's just like that environment, isn't it? That you're harnessing a place that you can be vulnerable and be yourself, but be supported in that too. I know that you had the Triple H sessions as well. That was a real turning point for your club, and I did hear like Damien Hardwick mentioned about Brandon Ellis not knowing about his living circumstances, and you just start to think, you think you know someone and you see him every day, but until you have those emotional chats, you don't. I think as a leader, you need to encourage those.
Yeah, and I think by creating, like, that's a daunting task for anyone to do, whether you've been at the footy club for 10 years or it is your first year. And I think the power in it was just the confidence that someone like Brando had and be willing to share. He spoke about the fact that he grew up in the commission area and that he would walk home a different way from his school just so that his mates didn't know that was where he lived. And I was one of probably two that knew that story, only because we shared a relationship and had spent a fair bit of time together. But like, to be at a club for 6 or 7 years and not many people know that about you is kind of like, geez, do we really care about people? And then the conversations that spiral from those moments.
How did his attitude change as well when he release that.
Yeah, he just felt like he could genuinely be himself. And Brando's always been pretty honest, and he calls a spade a spade. That's just the way he is. But like I remember filming because he asked me to. I was sitting in the front row, and I think we were up at the Gold Coast actually on our camp, or Sunshine Coast, and he wanted me to send it to his girlfriend at the time. But it just, I don't know, it just released this amazing emotional energy that brought people even closer together.
That connection, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think, back in the day when I was in the VFL, I was also part of the leadership group at North Ballarat, and we had very similar culture as, Dan Feary pulled up Corey Jones, so like a North Melbourne elitist of elite, and said, you didn't run around the goalposts, and we'd already gone another half of the oval. And he said, you're coming with me. He's like 18, 19 at the time. Brings him back around, and like that's just, you should be able to have that confidence that that's what the group's going to do.
Yeah.
And like then everything just comes, so there's just this deep rooted respect, and you can't buy it. Like it's those things, and I wanted to extend this into, I think, the Resilience Project. Hugh Van Cuylenberg, was it? He came to the footy club.
Yeah, he's presented a couple of times too. Yeah.
And like Dusty grabbed like all the books or something, didn't he? He still got them.
It's amazing. Like even Dusty's journey in itself is kind of, you look at this guy who has achieved everything you possibly can in the game. Is a freak, looks like he couldn't give two shits about a lot of things, but is hugely connected to the whole spiritual side of the world and people, and genuinely cares about how people are going. And
you two are very close.
And that was just, part of him exploring a little bit more around the gratitude and empathy and mindfulness, which is the GEM model that the Resilience Project use. And they're the little things that are just subtle moments where, again, it just creates that further conversation, and then ideas that come from, that. I think Hugh came in a couple of times previous to us having any success. I think it might have been 2012 and 14. So you can't tie our success back to any specific moment, but it's all these little building blocks that have had an impact along the journey.
2012, you didn't do too bad.
The old token Brownlow. Yeah.
Pick up a few umpires off the ground.
You've got to help them out, keep them happy. Now just spray them.
No, it's great, mate. That like you're seeing that shift in the Richmond of old as well. Like, and it's just to step up as captain as well. There's a lot of pressure on you as well as the organisation at the top, and for them to give you those reins. I want to talk about confidence and like where you get that from, because like personally, in business and whatever you do in life, if you go in something with confidence, you usually come out the other side pretty good. So like, how do you get your confidence, Cotch?
Yeah, I suppose for me, part of the journey for me was really understanding who I was and what I valued. And I think that's just really held me in good stead for every decision I've made since going on that journey, probably end of 2016 with Ben Crowe, who has just, he probably saved my footy career and potentially my life, given where I was at the end of 2016. But just having a real clear purpose in life, and then also the values that help support that, allows you to make decisions with such ease. And that'll always be challenged, and there'll be moments where they're low points and you'll start to question some of that, but it just gives you a solid base to come back to every time. One of my favourite sayings is, from your darkest time come your greatest growth or your greatest lessons. And no truer words have ever been spoken to me with regards to not just footy journey, but life in general. And part of the sales role and seeing people come in and interview and be exceptional, they're very authentic, and then once they get the role, they start to change and think that they have to be something that they're not necessarily. That was me as a captain. I thought I suffered from the perfection myth, as we like to document it, and that stems from an upbringing of wanting to always make my dad proud, probably first and foremost. But when I realised that it's okay to strive for perfection, but realising that it actually doesn't exist, that was a really key moment for me to sort of take off the mask and understand who I was, and that I didn't necessarily need to be the best part of Joel Selwood and Matthew Pavlich and Rob Murphy and Luke Hodge, all these leaders of footy teams that had been successful that I admired. I just needed to be the best version of Trent Cotchin, because you get to that position for a reason, and part of that might be the fact that you can impact games and have a role to play with regards to leading by example. But I think what I'm most proud of in my leadership journey is that most of mine has come from just building relationships, having empathy and understanding, and trying to help people find better versions of themselves more so than being better footballers.
That's great, mate. Yeah.
And it is and it's a team game as well. So when you can get to that level, we used to call it past the grunt stage.
Yeah.
Like you really can develop those relationships. And when you know that person's got your back, not just on the field, but in life as well, it's like, what can't you achieve, And I think that to see the success, particularly from 2017 to 2020, that's a direct reflection of what happened back then to get to that point. Those feelings, I can only imagine, were incredible once, almost surreal, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and, as good as the premierships have been, like, for me, the conversations you have, even say it's a premiership reunion or, stretching, like, we speak about the hub more than we speak about winning the flag in the hub.
Yeah.
Just because it's all the experiences along the way, like great people setting amazing examples with regards to just gratitude and giving people a gift. Like something we're big on with Posi Socks is positivity. Like that feeling you get, that positive feeling you get from giving to someone else. And Nathan Broad and Kane Lambert effectively started their own fishing charter. It was one of the only things we could do when we were living in the hub in 2020. But they would just invite guys. So, for example, Shaxter, our physio, literally would work from pretty much the moment he gets up to the moment he goes to bed, because what else is he going to do? And everyone's just sort of mingling around. They're like, oh, I'll get some treatment on my back. Why wouldn't I? So they would take guys like that off for fishing for a few hours in the afternoon. He'd left his family back in Melbourne, but it was his little escape, but it was their way of giving someone a gift. And, it seems small, but the way that impacted, like, people were lining up hoping to get an invite to this fishing charter every week. And they'd go to different spots, and sometimes they'd catch lots of fish, and other times they wouldn't catch a thing. But
that positivity, that's a good word.
Yeah.
That's a good one. A lot of companies and teams should really take something like that on.
Yeah, we're happy to support them on the journey.
Yeah.
Get them to reach out.
Yeah, Posi Socks. Absolutely. Just a shout out to Posi Socks there. We're going to throw a fair few of that out. But I think the other thing I wanted to touch on with all that is like seeing the difference that when you put like other people first, it just like transcribes everything to a new level. And I know, you've spoken now about your confidence in yourself and how that developed over time, but it's like when you looked outwardly, inwardly grew as well, yeah? And I think as a father as well, and you spoke about your upbringing, you can now sort of, and there's no rule book on having kids, I'm sure, but now you see like your children, how you want them to be perceived, and you're the ultimate role model, not only for the footy club, but for your kids.
Yeah, and I think people would say that, but don't worry, there's plenty of times where I sit there and I go, geez, I was a shit dad today. Like, that was not what I think is good parenting. But at the end of the day, I'm human just like you are, and every other dad and mum.
Yeah.
Look, I think being a mum is the hardest job in the world, and first you have to give birth to your child, which there's no chance I could ever do it, couldn't go through it. Yeah. But then the commitment you make for the next chunk of your life as a mum, particularly, and a dad, is so sacrificial. And seeing the way that they grow every single day, kids, like they are, they bring the most joy, but they can challenge you more than anything in the world. But yeah, I'm just trying to do my best, and that's all you can actually do.
You come home from footy training, and then your wife Brooke's probably like, mate, hard enough.
Yeah. Don't complain to me. You got to escape for 10 hours today.
And how have you found, like, your home environment's very important? We do talk a lot about this on our podcast, about energy and environment, and I think Brooke's your rock.
Yeah.
And your kids are your rock too, and like you would draw so much positivity out of your family. Like for our listeners as well, how important is that for you?
Yeah, they provide an amazing balance for me. I think when Brooke and I first got married and Harper was on the way, like one thing that I promised whilst I was captain, that I wouldn't bring work home. Now, I'm not sure I can say that I did it all that well, but in most cases, I think we've managed to do that. But as you said, like, I have no doubt that without having Brooke by my side through the most challenging times, but also the most rewarding times, they probably wouldn't have happened for me. Like, she's incredibly honest, but the most incredible with regards to support and so forth. And I honestly don't think you can do it alone. And whether that's your wife or just a best mate, like another saying that I love is a problem shared is a problem halved. Like, we all have fucking problems. Life is hard. Sorry about swearing, but
it's all good.
It is. 100%.
But if you can share that with people, you'll understand that either they've been through something similar or that they just have your back. But by sharing it, instantly you feel as though maybe I am a little bit overwhelmed for a little bit less of a reason than I need to be.
It's that vulnerability to like allow that to show.
Yeah, and particularly as males, like I know at my worst, I don't want to impact anyone else's life with my shit. But if I don't, you end up in a bad place.
Yeah.
Hey. And it's just, we're chatting to Dan Kirby about this yesterday around how important it is to pick the role. You come together with energy. I think you're kind of compatible in your own way, but how obvious it is if you get the wrong partner or you see someone that gets the wrong partner, and how negative of an impact that can have on their life. Because like you said, a problem halved is a problem shared. If you don't have that ability or that safe space or that rock, it can be very difficult. So it's good that's a great point.
Yeah, because like life throws these curveballs at you, and if you don't have someone that's got your back, like, you know, you can really struggle, and it goes through your whole life. And, you know, this is a great like lead into the next question I want to ask you, Trent. Is like, there's life beyond footy. You know that. Like, we're sitting here, we're washed, you know, 34, 33 yourself, and, you know, Will's still a young rooster, but it's like, you do realise your career in sport has only got a certain validity. And then past that, what are you doing? And, you know, I'm excited, like, by what you're going to do, because like that's why I have my not-for-profit Moon Dreams, and helping sick kids in the hospital with neurological conditions, because it makes me feel like money can't buy that.
Yeah.
And you know, through Posi Socks now, I know you're doing a lot of school visits. And what lights you up, mate? Like, what's your passion?
It's a great question. Like, I would encourage everyone to go on a journey of really understanding what their purpose is in life. And what lights me up is the perfect question to start. Like, if you're sitting at a cafe, just write down a whole heap of things that really light you up. It's a great place to start. But for me, so establishing my purpose was a really important part of my own journey, and that is to help others realise. But then I put the accountability part in and realise and fulfil their potential. And for me, like, whether that's my kids or a teammate or, you know, meeting people through the Posi Socks journey, it's very much just about, one, making the world a better place, but providing people with the opportunity that, you know, maybe it took me a while to get, but if we can give that to them, then that's a pretty good gift to give. Yeah,
and this is like you know, we really want to spread that message through this podcast as well, is because, you know, aside your sporting career, like, you're still an elite human being under the core of it all, and you're going to change the world, because life is way too short, and you've probably seen your kids grow so quickly.
So quick.
300 games have come like that from when you were 17 in your first game, and you start to realise, like, what legacy and like what impact am I going to leave in life, and you know, being in the position you are, you have a great advantage to share that. Yeah, and I think that the Posi Socks part is a big part of the journey, and doing our Posi Schools program, and like the whole lot. The thing is, you sit down and you have a million ideas come to life, and only so little amount of time to actually execute on them. But, you know, there's Posi Business, there's Posi Community, building relationships with like-minded brands, or brands that want to do a little bit more around social good. You know, for every order we donate a pair to the homeless, so contributing back in that light as well. But outside of that, I have other interests that still connect back to my purpose. So one of them is called Core Plus Studios, and that is reformer, mat Pilates, but also yoga. But for me, it's around building community, where people
we want to be the best part of their day, effectively. Like whether it's to start the day and you do a heated yoga session or a heated mat Pilates, and you walk out feeling energized and ready to attack the day, or it's the last part of the day for you to wind down. And that for me is creating an environment where people genuinely can grow, or meet new people, or lean into a new part of a fitness journey. Like, so many people are scared to start that because they've let it go for the last 5 or 10 years, but seeing them grab a hold of it and then end up doing 5 classes a week, like that's really special to see. And it's very much connected back to my purpose, because helping others realise their potential. It may look a different way. And then other things that I'm interested in. And I think the thing that I'm promising myself when it does come to the end is that I want to remain really curious and not lock myself into anything at the expense of being fearful of paying a home loan off, or just being worried about probably the financial part of life. I really want to connect to what I'm passionate about and giving back to the world in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Just even, posi socks themselves. Like, I've bought a few pairs now. I've got some on.
I was going to say, we need to explain what posi socks is for everyone.
We're
all wearing a pair today.
Essentially, like the motto, win the morning, win the day. Yeah,
so posi socks, the whole idea came from kind of I wanted to give people my journey in a really simple format. And one of the things I love doing is journaling, but I know that it's really hard to remember to do every single morning.
When your kids jump.
So for me, it was like, what's one of the first things that you do after you have a shower in the morning that can help be that trigger or the anchor that allows you to start your day on the right foot, pardon the pun. And I came across this Instagram post where it was like on the bottom of the feet, someone was laying on their bed, it just said, "More wine, please." I was like, you could do something on the top of the foot as you're putting them on, you're reading a quote. It's either a call to action where it's around showing appreciation to someone or doing something kind, or a positive affirmation that allows you just to sort of reflect and go, yep, that's how I really want to start my day. So that's the idea and the mentality behind having quotes on the feet, and then the contribution back to community. And we'll look to grow that in many different ways, but donating back to the homeless, it's the number one requested item with jocks as well in homeless shelters. So, and you can't actually give homeless people secondhand socks. It's just
I don't know.
Obviously, hygiene wouldn't be very good. But
Posi jocks, like what sort of quotes you could have put?
Yeah, well, you can go down the fun path where it's like, it's not the size that matters; it's how you use it.
So just for everyone as well, like I put the posi socks on first time this morning, and because I know not everyone like jumps at that opportunity, like believing in like positive affirmations and all those things, but I do, and Timmy does, and obviously you do, Trent. But for me, like I was whacking these on this morning, and first thing I read is keep moving forward, and you'll never have a reason to look back, and goals energize your life. And for me, like when I whacked those on, it just made me pumped for the day.
Yeah.
So I think
that's the other thing, is like your feet ground you to the earth as well, and something you put your feet on the ground when you get out of bed, and when you're putting your shoes and socks on, everyone has to do it. And if you're giving value to people in that way, mate, you are onto something.
That's just smart. It's that little moment, to just go, because you put your shoes on and you're setting yourself up for the day, and I thought it was just such a great idea.
Yeah. So which one resonates the most with you? Like which quote do you think?
Which quote?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty. It's like they'll resonate different at different moments in your week or your life.
Yeah, true.
Good shout.
Yeah, so there's plenty. One of my favourite ones is probably the yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today's a gift. So live here.
That's great.
That's why it's called the present. And that's so relative. Like we can get so caught up on a mistake we made yesterday, or that I was a shit dad in a moment yesterday. But in reality, if you continue to think about that, you're going to lose that moment right now. And if you're worrying about tomorrow, well, at the end of the day, sometimes tomorrow doesn't come. So don't even worry about it.
I think, I just want to add in there, like my clothing brand that I started 7 years ago, it's called Brainless. And a lot of people look at it and go, like, you're like, in the dictionary term is like idiot or whatever. But when I actually explain to them, being brainless is being present, because you're not thinking, you're feeling.
Yeah.
And when, you play footy and you pick up a ground ball and kick a goal and you're like, how did I do that? It's because you're in the state of flow.
Yeah.
And same, like, through footy and motorbikes, especially for me, is you can't be anywhere else but there, present.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful place to be.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I think that a very similar way to do this is through putting your socks on every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mate,
I love that. Well done.
I think that, I was really pumped and just I'm so intrigued personally by what lights people up, and all the answers are when someone's doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get brought up at school, and all these parents, it's no, you got to get a great paying job, and it's but when you give, I was always under the understanding that it comes back tenfold anyway. So the money comes when you're putting, not that life's about money, but it's when you're putting your energy positively into something that you're actually benefiting others. That's where the value comes.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you guys.
Yeah, here we go.
What does success look like to you?
For me, what success looks like is fulfilling a life that makes you happy when you wake up and who you're sharing that with. So for me, I always do a bit of an audit. It's who are the people in my life? Am I in the right environment? If I am, sitting here with Timmy, 3 months ago, Trent, we kicked off this podcast, and it was just off a conversation in a gym.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's we should just do a podcast. We have some pretty good chat, but there's some people that we could probably share some conversation with, and it's just grown. Now we're sitting in front of yourself, and we had Dan Kirby yesterday, and for me, I get to sit back and reflect and go, this is what success is to me. I'm getting to do something that I love, sharing with people that are great people, and I'm happy. Yeah, and I think success, money comes. I think money comes and goes. I think, and if you're doing what you love and you're really good at it, I think there's always a part of it where you want to be extremely competent in what you're doing as well. I think success, you still need to be good at what you do. You can't just go through life not being competent. Yeah. So I think that's important. There always needs to be that part, and then success will come. Yeah. But to me, I know that was a long-winded answer.
No.
To the question. But to me, that's what success is to me. I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Mine's I guess, I've always had the analogy of the diamond, the diamond under pressure, a lump of coal over time becomes a diamond. I think it's about the journey for me. Yeah. Success is who you become in the process. Yeah. And once a diamond's formed, it's unbreakable. So it is the slogan, no pressure, no diamonds to my brand. And I think that's what success is for me. And probably if I ever get a chance to fend off Dustin Martin, that'd be success. Because I was actually known for that back in the day.
Okay.
So we go to Dale.
So he owes you for the don't argue.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your definition of success, Scott?
Yeah. I think a little bit along that, if you're not growing, you're dying or you're dead. So always searching for ways to grow, whether that's through relationships, friendships, opportunities, and probably why I sit here today as well, meeting you guys, sharing a little bit of my story, but also learning about yours. So for me, it's just keeping an open mind, being interested rather than interesting, and celebrating all the little things along the way. And that's something that I constantly have to come back to, because I think, whether you talk to the most successful CEOs or entrepreneurs in the world, or people who are just literally getting up to nail their paycheck every single day, we probably don't reflect enough. And to be honest with you, it taught me such a great lesson going through my 300th last week, because I preach that so much to friends and people that I have relationships with through business. But I realised I hadn't done it enough myself, and that was the gift for me with my 300th week. I never wanted it to be about me, but it forced me to reflect with conversations, thinking time, photos, about lots of little things that have happened along my journey, not just in footy but in life, and being really proud of that.
Congratulations on that too, mate. A massive milestone. But did you have a moment for yourself where you sucked that week in a little bit?
Yeah, I had to promise myself, because I think in the past, and I know that a 200 and 250th is probably not quite as significant as a 300th for whatever reason, probably just that it's 50 more games. But I'm one of those people that tries to shy away from it. And I actually spoke to Crowie, my mentor, I think it was must have been the Friday night before the game. And he just said, mate, it's so important for you to dedicate your game tomorrow to someone. So I dedicated it to my family and my parents. And that just shifts your focus from it being about you to then being about someone else, but removes all ego, which is really important, particularly in sporting environments. Like, you need a little bit of ego to just have the belief and the confidence that you can fulfill your role. But and then he also provided the advice of just, setting a couple of goals that were not individual orientated and more team, which I typically do going into games anyway. But just having that clarity going into the game really helped with having a clear focus, and I think the footy gods looked after me a little bit, started off the game all right. Yeah. Everyone keeps telling me I wound back the clock. I'm starting to be concerned that I obviously haven't performed very well for a little bit of time now. So
well, it's all in your head.
You need to whack some posy socks on it.
It's exactly right.
You probably do, at least Richmond.
I actually did a gig with Dimmer last night, and he nearly opened the whole show with, "Well, mate, I'd probably still be coaching if you were playing footy like you did last week earlier in the year." And I was just like, okay, interesting. If you had played me in the midfield rather than on the half-forward flank, you probably would have a coach job too still. It was good. It was friendly banter. And,
really good.
Had a bit of fun.
Yeah. No, it's important to do that still. Hey, have a bit of fun, and I know you and Dimmer have a good relationship, so mate, it's so important. Hey,
yeah.
This has been phenomenal. We need to get to like the core of it now. So the 5 keys to success, Trent. I know. I think I sent it through on it, but you should be able to reel off a few things here for sure.
Yeah, the 5 keys to success for me. You need to. I touched on it, but purpose and values, they're probably the 2 things for me that will always give you some form of true north, effectively, that you're working towards. I think you need to have a serious work ethic. You need to surround yourself with good people that genuinely care about you. That's 4. And to be honest with you, like, life's too fucking serious. So I think you need to have fun and enjoy and celebrate all the moments, whether they're little, big, or in between.
And outside of footy, like, what do you do have fun?
Yeah, I think the beauty of having kids is
Disney
like,
on ice.
I think you see it, you realise it when you are playing with your kids, like having that, one of the words, so we're going to go into a deeper part, but something that I do as part of my preparation every game is I have 5 words that are effectively my attributes or focuses. So jokey, aggressive, aware, calm, and then strong and sharp, which relates to my footy, but also relates to the state that I'm in, a little bit about getting into that flow. And then I've got an anchor that allows me to get back into that. So I have 1 deep breath, a bounce, and a smile. So that's sort of me just lightening up rather than tightening up. Yeah. But I see that in my life as well. So those moments where you can get frustrated or angry with something that's, like, we have expectations of everyone in the world, but if we can replace that with the appreciation, I think takes so much pressure off what we're hoping for. Yeah. And even just to your kids, like, at the end of the day, I've got an 8, 6, and near 4-year-old. Like, my expectations of them are way too above where they should be for kids. So I need to remind myself constantly, but having fun with that and taking the piss and being a big kid myself, like, we all need to find the childlike part of who we are. And I encourage people, if you're in a bit of a rough spot, go and do something that made you really happy as a kid. It might be just literally making some jelly and fill up a bowl of ice cream and
bit of fairy bread
jelly and tucking into it, because
kids
it triggers those thoughts that you have from your childhood.
Moment, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they'll tell you
there's
exactly
nothing in between.
what's going on.
Yep, no filters there.
Yeah, no, that's the best piece of advice though. Yeah. It's like living in the moment. Children can teach you that. Yeah, we forget it as adults.
Absolutely. And when you are present, you'll notice, I notice my kids appreciate it more than they even do normally. So pretty special.
Well, in the name of appreciate coming on, Cotch. Appreciate you, Timmy.
Yeah,
You're
mate.
champion.
This has been a solid trip to Melbourne. Thank you so much, Cotch. Like, from the bottom of our heart, mate. Yeah. To open up like this and have this kind of conversation, we truly appreciate it, and hope that, like, our listeners and people out there can get something from this just to take into their lives and, go along their journey to becoming a diamond, I suppose.
No, appreciate you guys putting yourselves out there and creating an environment where people can share and take a lot out of it. So.
Yeah, just so listeners know as well, like, I've reached out to Cotch on LinkedIn, like, don't know each other from a bar of soap, but I just thought, you got to ask in life as well. And if you want to do great things in life, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And, your reception was like, mate, I'd love to chew the fat with you, and then I just thought, well, it gives you the confidence to keep going,
to give yourself credit, like Trent's time, he's elite at what he does. He's not going to give his time out to someone that's not running towards a purpose or is going to add value. So as much as Trent, absolute legend for giving his time on a Saturday on bye week, but he wants to, like he said, connect with people that are doing good things. And that's just credit to you as well, mate, that you reached out, but Trent only wanted to reply back to you if he thought there was you're a good person and there was something there.
It's having the courage. And we spoke about Brandon Ellis earlier. One thing, like I said, he was pretty straight to the point. He says, if you don't know, you don't ask. And like I've seen him in firsthand ask people what they earn, like so cringy as hell sort of stuff. But he's like, no, well, if you don't ask, you don't know. And I'm like, mate, to be honest with you, we've had different upbringings and been on different journeys. But he taught me as much in that moment that I've taught him with regards to setting a goal or living a better life.
Absolutely, it's just looking at life through a different lens.
Absolutely,
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening. And we appreciate you, Cotch.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.